Welcome to episode 7 of Ask an Actor, our series where we explore all the questions that we have as young people wanting to go into this crazy industry of ours. And I am once again here with my favorite human in the world, Emma Wright, my co-founder of Jumpstart Youth Theatre. And we are again today exploring our own stories of how we made it into our careers. So 2 weeks ago, if you tuned in, you would have heard the beginning of our stories, which really talked about our early years, that first spark, how we ended up following this pursuit. And where we left off, we were talking about drama schools. We've just been talking about how we got into them. Well, Emma's isn't a drama school. We'll go into that, don't you worry. But we talked about, getting into them, choosing to go there. And that's what we're picking up from today. So little Lucy is 18 now. She's at Whopper, doing a guinea pig year of a first ever course called Performance Making. And Emma is...
I am 15 and I am doing a bachelor degree in film and television production. And I will be here until I turn 18.
Oh my gosh, still so little.
Still a baby.
Still a baby. So because you're behind me in years, you have to start.
Oh gosh, okay.
Let's talk about that. So my interests with you, Emma. So you were already building, as we talked about last time, this amazing career for yourself in the performing arts. You were doing a lot of screen acting already. You had an agent. You studied a lot of other disciplines like dance and singing. And then suddenly you decided to go to a film production school or a university, and that was your major there. And we have talked about why you made that choice in the past episode. So today we're going to talk about that experience that you had there. So I'm really interested in how that shaped your career. I suppose, was that a turn for you to go into something that was so behind the scenes, and was it an enjoyable experience for you to do all that?
Yeah, my degree was a super positive experience. I grew a lot as a person and as an artist, and I think it was a really valuable use of my time, and I think it's contributed really positively to my career and just to my general sense and understanding of how all the departments work, specifically on a screen set, but that it transfers also to stage, and just gaining an appreciation of all the work that goes into actualizing a project, and all those the work of all these people coming together to shape this project, and if you don't have one of those people, the whole project suffers, and it won't be able to be the thing that it's destined to be. So I think it really, above most things, it taught me or solidified the understanding of how much making art relies on teamwork. And I think up until that point, I'd sort of been doing a lot of stuff independently. Like I would film little projects by myself. I'd shoot little music videos or little short films by myself, doing everything. I'd record the camera and then I'd jump in front and I'd do it all. I'd either be doing that or I'd be on set as an actor, where you don't really see it all, like all the cogs in the machine working. You're only really seeing one side of it. So I think in my degree, I really woke up to just how much goes into making the thing, and how much each department is relying, how much they rely on each other, and what really, and the best work comes when you have a team working cohesively and collaboratively, which obviously I think we all know, but I think having the actually getting in there and experiencing that was really powerful. And I think every actor would benefit from, experiencing it just to a degree, because you really understand like just how important everybody's role is. Yes, I think it was very valuable for just getting that respect and appreciation and understanding of how this team works. And also, it gave me a skill set, which, the degree was structured in a way that we had subjects dedicated to each of the disciplines. So we had a cinematography subject, an audio subject, editing, blah, 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 for all the departments. And I learned a lot, obviously, a lot of technical knowledge, a lot of practical knowledge. We shot a lot of projects, and you were required to really move around the departments. You may enter the degree thinking, I want to direct, but that's not what you're going to spend the whole degree doing. It forces you to step into all the other roles, and I think that's really important because, as I say, there can be this attitude of, my job's more important than yours, or, why are you taking so long to do your job, or, your job's easy. But by actually having to step into each of the roles, you kind of realize that that's not the case. And so I think that's a journey that all film students sort of go through. And then when we got to working with actors, that was really interesting, because, I kind of got to see, I could view it from both sides. I could view it from the side of being an actor, working with a director, and what an actor sort of desires from a director, and versus what they receive. And also as a film student, who, your mind is, you're still sort of getting a handle over all the, the technical side of the craft. And now all of a sudden you've got an actor to work with, and you're having to work with them. And, you get thrown in the deep end fairly quickly. And you kind of, there's this saying of, you have technical directors and you have like actors, directors. And, you saw a lot of that. You saw people who could really communicate with a crew and really get across a vision for, how it's going to be lit and what the shot's going to look like. But then you have them with an actor, and all of a sudden it's like they don't have the
vocab.
Yeah, which I feel like was kind of perhaps underemphasized in the course.
I think that's like universal. Like I did a unit at WAZA at WAPA, which is this Screen Academy, and WAZA's WAPA. And I found I was like quite shocked going there. Like, what? I did a producing unit, but I constantly was stepping in and kind of doing the talking with the actors, because a lot of the other, the directors didn't know how. Like I ran all the auditions. I think that's a thing in the film world. That's not as big a part of the training.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's, we even had a directing actors subject, but I think even in that, it was so weird. It was like all of a sudden you had, students working with actors, and it was like, the directors viewed actors as these alien beings, and were like, how do we talk to you? And it so often became this sort of thing of, they're just not giving me what I want. And it's like, oh gosh, like you have to work together, and you have to really develop the vocab, and develop a way of communicating what you want in a way that is actable.
And also be open to their interpretation. It's not just about coming in with a vision and
totally
for you. You have to be inspired by your actors and let them bring something to it as well.
Yeah. And I think because in uni, you're doing so much. I mean, sometimes we would work on, existing scripts. We would take a scene from a film or a TV show, and we'd shoot it. But a lot of the time you're working with your own writing. And so there does become this sort of preciousness, or I'm not sure if that's even the right word, but it does become kind of like, you're here as a piece in my puzzle. and I just need you to do your role. And which just shouldn't be the way it works. And I think you're learning within the crew that you need to be collaborative, but I think maybe that didn't always extend to, you have to be the same way with your actors, and they're not props. So that was interesting. And, as you say, I sort of did end up stepping into, being almost a translator on a lot of sets, because people, knew I had an acting background, and they're like, "Oh, Emma, I'm struggling. Can you help communicate this?"
And now that I think about it, I don't think I know any. I'll think of 3 when we end this, but I feel like every director I know in the theatre world comes from an acting background. Even if it wasn't something that they really, attempted to do. I think either at university stage or younger, they had their introduction to the world was usually through acting, and then they found something from being in that community. While in film, I don't know any film directors who act,
That's really interesting.
Yeah. Have you think the same from the network that comes to your head straight away?
Yeah, I mean, at uni there were, I could probably count on one hand the amount of, the amount of people in the course that were from an acting background. There were a couple of us, but not many. And I think most of my cohort had no interest in acting, or no past experience. They maybe had done a production in school, maybe. But yeah, that's really interesting, because you do so often find that theatre directors have that background. And I guess it comes down to the fact that, there's that old saying, theatre is an actor's medium, film is a director's, TV is a writer's. So there's sort of the emphasis is placed sort of differently, maybe.
Never heard that saying.
Oh, really? Wow.
In my little theatre world, I am. I'm in a film industry. Like, what?
Yeah, but no, overall it was really positive, and I think really helpful. And I think, even to this day, establishing eye contact and, doing...
Which is her theatre company, and not just her learning to give eye contact to people.
Yes. I've done a fair bit of... I'm doing some producing through that, and, can carry over that skill set. But also, just being in the room and being able to appreciate that, what goes into each of the roles, like, it's hard work for everybody. Everybody's stressed. Everybody's putting in a lot of time, a lot of energy, effort. And so, yeah, I think it's been super valuable, and just, opened up possibilities and opportunities to create my own work, which has been really empowering as an artist, and something I'm, a big champion of.
Yeah.
But
was there any part of your course that you fell in love with, in terms of did you ever at some point think that you might work behind the scenes professionally? Or was it always like this? I'm doing this because I want to be an actor.
I think it was mostly this will
pathway.
Yeah, but I mean, I had never done any sort of writing for screen, and I really enjoyed that. I mean, I think my first screenwriting teacher, I didn't get on so well with. They just had a very traditional approach to screenwriting. Everything was 3-act. Everything was, hero's journey. So it was very looking at Hollywood story lines and story arcs, which I wasn't so interested in. I think I've always been a little bit more interested in things that are more experimental and more imagery focused and metaphoric. And my second screenwriting teacher was incredible, and a big inspiration, and really worked with me on my graduation film to get it where I wanted it to be, because it wasn't linear. It wasn't wasn't fitting that conventional form, and he was very supportive of that, which was wonderful. And so I really enjoyed working with him, and I think that opened my eyes to the possibilities of writing for screen, and it's something I've done a little bit of. I've never actually, nothing I've written for screen has actually been actualized except for my graduation film. There are some projects I have that I'd like to one day make happen, but they're sort of sitting in a drawer. And I enjoyed directing. I enjoyed, the working with actors side of directing particularly. I actually did a lot of work in the sound department. There was a shortage of soundies when I was at uni. It was kind of the role that nobody wanted to do. And I think I sort of maybe fell into it because of that. I can't say that I had a huge passion for it, but it was, something that I did a fair bit of. And I would have loved to have done more cinematography, but I felt that there was sort of a bit of a gender bias there, and it was just, I think, a bit tricky in a male-dominated class to kind of get your hands on the damn camera. That was always a bit of a fight.
Particularly young women,
Yes. And I felt that was a bit difficult. But we had a photography unit subject, which I loved. I've always, my dad is a big, always has been, had a love of photography. And so I kind of grew up with the camera in my hands. And so to do that in a, I don't know, more like, I don't know, not professional, but in a structured fashion, and to have the, the weekly tasks with that, I really enjoyed. And, something I've always maybe thought I would make something of, but haven't. So yeah, there was definitely like lots of points of interest and lots of things that I could imagine myself doing, but I haven't necessarily pursued any of them, except for, I guess, I moved more into playwriting.
I know, and I think this was going to we'll get into this more in the next chapter, because I think I'm sure moving to Sydney had a big part in this, but it's so amazing to hear your roots and what started your passion of this. And it's all screen, right? Like you did screen growing up, you did short films, then you went and did a film production university course.
Yeah.
And you were so embedded in the theatre world.
So embedded, yeah.
Theatre company. So
yeah.
And
wild. We'll get there.
Explore that more.
And Luce, you went down the drama school path.
I did in a non, and it wasn't the drama school path that 17-year-old Lucy dreamt of. Amy's talked about that too, on my podcast with her, my episode with her, where she talked about, we all have our drama school dream, and most of us look like neither, and that's what it is, the reality. And mine, second of all, looked like Whopper, and I didn't really get that. Like I got number 3, which was Whopper, but this other version of it in this brand new course that no one really knew what it was going to be, including the teachers. And I want to kind of preface the story by saying my experience wasn't a positive one, but that's not because of the course. Like I'm not stamping on the course at all. I think it has so much merit and is really such a great, I think I got a lot out of it. And I think for some people it's exactly, there couldn't have been a better course out there for them.
Yeah.
So we didn't know what we were getting in for, and no one did, but what it turned out to be was very much 3 years of intensive physical theatre.
Okay.
And that was not what I thought it was going to be, and not what I would have done if I had known that. I mentioned Frances Barb last time, who was the course coordinator, and such a fantastic, incredible woman. She has a PhD in Suzuki and Butofu. And of course, her being the course coordinator, that's very much what the course became. So we did very intense. We did Buto a lot. We did Suzuki every day. Was stomping a lot. Great muscles at that time. Lots of yoga. And the idea of that training is you don't need to be good at it. It's not about being the best. It's about training yourself and emotionally training yourself. Having this mental kind of state with it, which will support you as an actor. But it comes back down to that thing I talked about being in high school, which is that we love what we're good at.
Yeah.
And I do really feel what you were saying last time when you were saying about talking about dance, that being in a room and being the worst at it taught me a lot.
Yeah.
I think a stronger person and teaches you a lot of humility. But was that what I wanted to go and do at university, was do something that I actually wasn't good at? Definitely not. And I actually didn't know going in that I would hate it that much. And hate is too strong a word, that I would not have a connection to it as much. Like, for instance, we did a course in puppetry, and I was so excited to do that. I thought I would thrive in that unit. I hated it, man. It is so physical. You know, these bizarre positions, and it felt very the way I didn't get a creative flair from it at all. I didn't feel good at it. I could tell everyone around me was very underwhelmed by anything, you know, and it didn't flourish an environment for me of inspiration.
Yeah.
And I guess so it was very physical theatre based, and it was very devising based. I would say actually that was the main part. And you often devise from a physical theatre route in, you know, so we would do a stomp and then it would turn into a physical improvisation, which would, you know, you could use for devising theatre. And that was something I'd explored already in Waco. When I'd been there, I'd actually done 2 devised shows with them at this point. Yeah. Maybe I did, actually, maybe I was still doing them when I was at Whopper. But yeah, I'd done a couple there. And I never loved the results of them, you know? They're really hard when you have a group of very young people, like a group of 18-year-olds, making their own work from scratch. It's never as good as getting a professional playwright.
Yeah.
And people do incredible, you know, we have some, you know, we know some incredible devised theatre makers in Sydney, and I know some in Perth as well. And some of the people in my course were great, so it's definitely not me saying that about anyone, but I certainly did not find my love in that. And the work we made, like my mum never liked one of my shows at Whopper, you know, like it was that kind of theatre that I sometimes feel like a non-theatre going audience finds very, what's the word? Like I think it can be, it's not accessible, you know?
Yeah, sure.
Which has become, and again, all of these things I'm saying now, these are all retrospective. At the time, I couldn't have articulated this, or I didn't know this about myself or about my taste, and this helped me build all of those things. So that's really great. But I found that I wanted to make more accessible, intellectually wise work that would speak to a wider audience, which I'm sure my colleagues at uni would disagree with and say that the work is accessible, you know, like I think it really is a matter of opinion, and I think that there's a lot of merit in that as well. That was my experience of it anyway.
It's interesting, I think, as you know, you talk about taste, and I think you know, as artists we find we're drawn to different kinds of art, and you know, some of us are more like, you know, flourish when we're working with text, and you know, other people are very much actors who come alive through physicality, and other people are just, you know, born devisers. Like I think you find where you fit, and I think there's value in kind of exploring all of them, but perhaps, you know, doing a degree in something which isn't necessarily like the part of the arts that you really come alive in and really enjoy is possibly, you know, not ideal, but
but my teacher, she did keep to her word, which I talked about last week, which was that she wanted it to be flexible. She wanted us to be able to do what we wanted to do. So, and again, it's not like I came in and was like, what's this? I don't like this. It was very much like, I gave it my best shot, and emotionally too, like I really was open-minded to it, particularly in the first year, and I gave it my best shot. And I did feel myself grow and learn so much. And she was like a master in the stuff, you know, so you couldn't not learn from her.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until third year that I went to her and I said, I don't think I want to do physical theatre next year, like in my third year.
Yeah.
And she let me drop it, even though it was a compulsory unit, compulsory, huge part of our final year. So she did allow us to do that. Instead of doing that, I actually did a show. I did an independent show of Romeo and Juliet. So then I got to do my Shakespeare, and she marked me on that, you know, on that project. It was like a project-based unit. So it was really great in that way, and she really made it work for me still. And I mean, one of my most incredible experiences at uni was that I got to go to Singapore and do a program there, and that was all physical theatre, right? That was all of the stuff we're talking about. It was no theatre. Japan. We were in Singapore. We had a Japanese instructor come over from Japan to teach it. And what an experience! And also just being incredibly rigorous school. Every day was a 10-hour day of physical theatre, right? I do not know how those incredible students do it. And I think it was 6 days a week too. Like I don't even think it was Monday to Friday. And we really made the most out of it. I think like we would end those 10-hour days, and then these incredible students, they all came from different walks of life, different parts of the world, and they all had their own specialist areas. So one of them was a professional Indian dancer. And we used to do classes with her after we finished our, so she used to run these little classes herself. She was one of the students. And then we would learn that. Needless to say, I was terrible at all of them, but what an experience. And no theater, wow, that is a whole mental game, like in terms of you're so it's physical theater, but you have to be like this mindset you get into to do it is incredible. And I still keep up with those people I met over there, and that was an incredible experience, even though again it wasn't that physical theater thing that I was just like
well, just reiterating what you said, but that open-mindedness to your training, as much as I think it's good to have an awareness of where what you of where your passion lies. I think being open-minded and throwing yourself into things which perhaps are outside of your comfort zone or outside of your
talent, ability.
It's still like you're gonna do. You'll see so much growth, and I have certainly been in many rooms where I've been like, this is not for me. But I think rather than shutting yourself off from that experience, even if retrospectively I can say, look, I probably won't go back into that classroom. In the moment, just going, all right, I'm here, I'm going to give it my all, and I'm going to get the most out of it as I can, is totally the way to do it. Because if you're shutting yourself off from things, you just don't know what you're missing out on. And I think so often it's like an excavation. You're going, you're digging stuff up, and maybe you'll be digging for a while and not finding anything, and then all of a sudden you come across this lump of gold, and maybe it's because you kept going, or maybe you sort of were going down one way and then you took a little turn and went a different direction, and then you found it. It's all good experience.
Absolutely. And of course, while I was there, which I alluded to last time, was I did 1 unit in playwriting and 1 unit in directing, and that changed my life. And I wrote my first play through that playwriting unit. I started co-writing it with one of my best friends from that university, and I ended up just taking it on myself, and that was the beginning. And we'll get that will be in my next chapter. But that actually began my career. Like that. That play is a huge part of me being in Sydney, me being a director here. So absolutely. Yes, you can never shut anything out without. I mean, I gave that physical theatre a good 2 years of full dedication before I said I just don't think it's going to happen for me. And I was fit during that. There was lots of good things during that time. I was very fit. Yes, wow. And my final piece was devised as well. So instead of showcase, we did a show at this theatre called the Blue Room Theatre in Perth, which is really like the independent theatre of Perth. Like it is our golden glory. It's amazing. It's an amazing theatre. It's where my next chapter will go as well. I went back there, but we do a show there. We do a showcase, I suppose, there, and it's our own devised piece, which was also I was like, never again will I do devised.
Oh dear.
Even I had great, beautiful ladies to do it with. It wasn't a negative experience, just not one that I realized was in my skill set.
Sure. Yeah. Wild. And how did you go, like, we're stepping back a little bit now, but I mean, do you have any sort of words of advice or any sort of thoughts on, making a decision as to a drama school, or how do you cope with, how do you get back up on your feet when it perhaps doesn't go the way that you wanted it to go? I mean, I feel like, as a young person, to get that no can be so hard. But of course, it's not the end of your career or anything like that, but it can certainly feel like it. Do you have anything to like speak on there?
Well, I mean, we just have to know that the incredible actors of our world didn't get into drama, like, so in a big star version of that, Carey Mulligan couldn't get into any drama schools. She's one of my favorite actresses, and I've seen her perform in the West End. That's huge. And in my little world, I'm currently directing a one-woman show with Meg Clark, who I think is one of the most incredible actors in Sydney, and she couldn't get in. She eventually got into QT, but that, and she wasn't able to get into NIDA, wasn't able to get into WAPA. So like, it just means nothing. Those rejections actually mean nothing.
Yeah.
So that's great to know. In the time, I mean, I was just heartbroken. But and I think it's pretty hard to avoid that when you go through that experience. I don't believe in star signs or anything like that, but I am a Taurus, and I very much am a Taurus. Like, I had to plan every second of my life, and know exactly what my next year would look like. So for me, coping with this industry meant it wasn't so much having a backup, but having a really clear plan of what my life would look like that was realistic, and didn't, like, what's my life going to look like if I can't get into drama school? And I didn't just want to do nothing and audition every year until I got in. I really was I had seemed to have found a perspective, which was I need to go to drama school to be in the industry, which is just not true. And I think particularly nowadays, we have YouTube, we have all these other ways that you can get into the world. And I mean, you were doing it before you went to school. I think if you graduated at the end of high school, maybe you wouldn't have, you might not have even needed to go to university. You could have just gone out into the world. For me, I didn't have a network at all. And that didn't feel accessible to me. So I still was, but maybe I think my thing was nursing. I was going to be a nurse. And I was going to be, this was the thing, I just decided I'm going to be a part-time nurse, and that's going to be how that's going to be the thing I do. I'm going to be how I earn my money, and I'm always going to act on the side. And maybe I'll do nursing and then go back and do drama school later, that was okay to me. And I knew what I had something I really wanted to do next year that was achievable, and it didn't have to be, it's going to be at NIDA. So it wasn't a backup. It was just the other, I guess it was a plan B. Maybe it was stronger than plan. It was, this alternative journey that I wasn't really sure about. I think if I'd just gone in and been like, well, this is it, like Jake Spear did. We talked about that in our first episode. For him, it was like, well, this is it, I'm going, and I never had that. It was quite realistic of this might not work, and what am I going to do when it doesn't?
It's so interesting. I mean, I love hearing stories of how people, what people's entry point has been, and how people have made that, transition into the arts. Some of us are still figuring it out. And it's, a constant, at least in my experience, it's a constant thing of, figuring out what my next steps are going to be, and, how I'm going to, stay active, stay involved, and make that work in the basic sense of I've still got to pay my rent and get through the week. So and I think, we can't say it enough. There is no one set pathway, which I think can be hard when, especially our schools are kind of built around this idea of pathways. And, for most industries, it's a case of, okay, this is where you go. You go and get this degree, and you go to this place, and then you're in that industry, and you're on track. And the arts doesn't really have that. It's
doesn't. And one of my big gripes with our industry is that we are so focused around drama schools. Even being in Sydney now as a director, I'm constantly faced with the fact I haven't been to NIDA. And that was a choice I made, right? I've never auditioned for the NIDA, applied for the for the director course NIDA. I've never taken, I very consciously chose to instead do self-training, self-study overseas. But I feel like that all the time. I feel like there is the recommended pathway and the pathway that most people choose is drama school. Well, that is. And I come from my family, my dad being an engineer, my mum's being an artist, and all that. None of them have done postgrad. My sister included. And we were kind of taught this this idea that you go to university to learn how to learn, and then you learn how to do the job at the job.
On the job, yeah.
Yeah, and I really believe that. I don't, and you know, everyone's different and everyone needs something different. But for me, particularly not enjoying my university time, there was no way in hell I was going to do that again.
Yeah, for sure. You know, I have a very similar experience. I mean, I'm asked in auditions to this day, from time to time, so is drama school still on your radar? Because it's not something, it's not a box I've ticked. And you know, I feel that pressure every year when the auditions roll around. It's like, should I apply? Should I try and get in now? Like, is that something that I need to do to actually, you know, to take that next step in my career? So it's, you know, it's a constant battle, and I feel like it shouldn't be. But I think it's one of those things where it's become this ideology, or, you know, so ingrained in everyone's minds that this is what you have to be to do this, what you have to do, you know.
Is it just that Night is really good at marketing and now we all believe?
Gosh, I don't know. Or and it's bizarre because, as you say, there are so many, you know, successful big actors who didn't follow this path, but I think we still go, oh, but it's what Kate Blanchett did and it's what Hugh Jackman did. And I'm not sure if that's part of it. I think there's I don't know. And I think as a society, we're just like, oh, but, you know, Night is so competitive, like only the best of the best get in, therefore it must be the best coming out. So there's this like prestige factor about it as well. But, you know, as you said, I think everybody needs something different, and it's something that's been echoed throughout this series. You know, you've just got to ask yourself, what do you need, and make sure that, you know, what you do is you're not just following a path that you feel like you have to go down, but you're creating a path for yourself that fulfills your needs. And training does not have to only take place in a drama school. As you said, we've both studied overseas. And, you know, I've done a lot of training. I've done a degree, which is not in performance, but I think is still in the world of. And I've done a lot of courses. I've worked with a lot of teachers and a lot of different techniques. And you know, I think Jack Walton said it as well. Like, read. I read a lot. You know, comb through the technique books. You know, just keep trying to you know, expand your skill set and your knowledge. And because again, as he said, you know, you'll find that every director works their own way, every actor works their own way. So even if, you know, you stumble across something that doesn't work for you, you may work with someone who works that way. So just being able to be on the same page as them is so valuable. But yeah, the big thing I think is find your own way to train if drama school doesn't appeal to you, or if it's not accessible to you. And I think there does need to be some reevaluation of how we make these institutions more accessible.
Me too. And I believe, like, we are artists. That's what we do. So why would you want all of your artists to have the same philosophies? You know, I think that's really strange that we kind of demand that as an industry to have all come from this one cog.
When uniqueness is something that we like inherently celebrate, and like that's the thing that we're all sort of searching for. We're searching for our own our way to sort of stand out and bring our own essence to a space. And so to think that we all have to go through the same mold again, I think is a bizarre thing.
And I think if you can, you know, I don't think all actors need training, straight out. I think that little Jack Walton I've worked with him. He does not need drama school, you know, and I'm with Jeremy Campese, Jeremy Campese is another incredible actor I hope we have on the show one day, who one of the, I think, the finest actors in Sydney as well. Very young, didn't go to drama school at all, but he has trained. Like, don't get me wrong, he searches those classes, he finds those people that he responds to when he follows that route. So I don't want to discredit that either and just say he just wandered out and was great, you know. But there is, you know, I don't think that that drama school is required, or that like intensive training is required. will learn so much from being on the job and with a good director, you know.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, as you say, you can learn on the job. Get involved with your community theatre.
Yeah,
Get involved in independent theatre. Get involved in, contact the local film schools. Get involved in short films. And there's this is something we've been chatting a bit about in terms of the technology we have access to now, like, and the amount of resources we can access online. Like, find a script you love and set up your phone and film it. And if you do that regularly, and if you work that muscle, and if you're able to be self-critical enough to sort of see in what areas you're lacking, or which areas you need to work on, you can do some of the training yourself, if you've got the work ethic and that critical eye,
or just enjoy it, I suppose. Make work with it, and you'll probably just improve along the way.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, yes, technology, I think, has really changed the landscape for young artists, because there's so much you can do without having to wait for the phone to ring or wait for anybody to give you any opportunity whatsoever. You just can kind of do it yourself, which is wild. I mean, obviously it's going to be a lot of hard work, and you're not guaranteed for it to take off in any huge way, but that doesn't mean it won't happen, and it doesn't mean it's not worthwhile. It's just if you're passionate about it, you can do it.
Absolutely. I mean, I do think that one thing, and this is why it's a really, I think, easy pathway in some regards, going to drama school, any type of drama school, whether it's my course at WAPA, your course, or ACA, like this, it doesn't have to be the big three, is you can find a network that you might really struggle to find without it. And that was something, I mean, it's so interesting to talk about that though, because we both moved to Sydney and had to start again anyway.
Start from scratch.
That gives us. For me, it did give me my first roadblocks. So I guess if we'll go into the next chapter now. So the first year out, which is a really exciting year, exciting, daunting, challenging year for all young people. Is I had written this play in WAPA, and I think at this point it ends up being a four-hander. Very naturalistic, set in the naturalistic world. But at this point, I think it had, because I just did this course as well, but I think it had like movement pieces. I think there was 20 actors, and
wow,
what a bananas. And I obviously at this point, the Blue Room was just such an incredible resource for me as a young person. So they did a emerging producers weekend. I think it was free. And it was amazing. It's professional producers in, but they was also, very structured, and they went through all these, pretty much how to produce a show. They made this incredible pack for us that we took on, which really had it was like the timeline for a producer. And here's all the different, like people you need to be inviting to your shows. Like, had everything in it. These like mysteries of producing. I still go to that handbook today. So I did that. I met a producer there who was also actually studying at WAPA at the time in arts management. You never cross paths with these people at WAPA. It's so fun. But so through this other place, I met this person who was studying in the same place as me. Whose name is Harriet Roberts. She now runs the Blue Room. So it's been huge since then. But we started, I think our first step out would be the same, which is I took her this show and said, do you want to co-produce it with me? And I had an incredible, very, very lucky to have a fantastic director, theatre maker extraordinaire named Joe Louis, who is very much, if you're from Perth, Joe Louis, like he is Perth theatre,
wow.
And he's, a huge spirit. And he was just so generous with me and just said, I'll direct it, no worries. I'll help you develop it, no worries. And then, so I knew the Blue Room because of WAPA. And then he was on my application as well. So they had lots of faces they recognized. So when I did my submission, it's the same as pitching here. It's very hard to get your work into these places, to get a season. They said, they were pretty honest with me, that they said that me and one other very emerging artist both scored the highest, because it's quite the lengthy application process where you talk about sustainability of your show. Like a lot of things that aren't just the show and the artists. We had scored the highest with the panel, but we were full of these unknown artists, and we had competing against these very well-known Perth artists. And so they made the decision that they were going to take a slot and actually make it an emerging artist slot in the season, and they halved it and we shared it. So we had a week each, which was an amazing opportunity and experience. And the Blue Room gave us money. I think it was $1,000 each to help us do this show. I think we take 90% of box office. It's just things in Perth do not happen.
Wow, yeah.
Perth, I got grants to do this show because Perth, just being a young artist, I could apply, under 26 meant that I could apply for Healthways funding that was over there. There's just all these different pathways to have artists that you are the age that you are. You have all these different pathways you can go for money. Mm-hmm. So it turned into being the biggest funded show I've ever done to this day. Really sad. But yeah, so I assistant directed for Joe. I asked him if that would be okay, and he said yes. And he was very generous. That can be a really hard role, assistant director. Mm-hmm. Done it since, and I think his would probably and I had a really positive experience in New York as well. But other than that, Joe was my most positive experience with that, because he just was so generous, and he let me just come in and work with the actors on my own, even though there was no sense of this is my show. It was very much I think felt like he was a mentor on the show to me, and therefore anything I wanted to take on, he let me take on. So, and we developed the show down to be 4 actors and to be in the naturalistic world and be everything I wanted it to be. So that was huge. To get my show at the Blue Room and have a season straight out of Whopper was really special. And then to have a play under your belt's great, man. Yeah. I knew I wanted to direct, but I had absolutely no idea how one would do that. Who is going to come to you and be like, hey, you've never directed before, but want to direct this work? It just doesn't happen, right? And I had a few people tell me to do a Shakespeare, but even that it just felt really intimidating. I was like, how do you do that? Just do a show. It just felt very foreign. I think this is a question that a lot of young people have, even people older than me have, is how do you begin? If you're interested in directing, how on earth do you take that first step in it? And so having a play under my belt, we're getting further into the story now. But moving on, I then kept developing it. This is the only play I have ever put on as well. So I quit playwriting after this pretty much, but this was the beginning for me of everything. I then moved to Sydney, and I was lucky enough that I moved straight into a house with a professional theatre director who was my own age, but very much already immersed in the Sydney scene, and Brandon, my partner, who's a professional actor. So I kind of jumped from one network to another. I didn't have to really start from scratch as much as you probably did, Emma. So I was lucky in that way, and I got a coffee with Sean, who was running the Old Fits at the time, or was running the late night slots at the Old Fits, and he read it. He read Fracture, and he said, "Yeah, let's do it." And I had said at the beginning I wanted to direct it, but I don't think he'd heard me. I don't think it was until after he programmed it that he was like, "Oh, by the way, who's directing?" And I was like, "Me," and he was like, "Okay."
Oh my goodness.
So that I got my first show, and I don't think I would have had it programmed if I had just said, I'm hoping to do a Shakespeare I've never directed before. I still don't understand how people do it that way. So there is a real useful thing. If you can buckle down and write your own work, even just for the beginning, it can help. And I know a lot of actors have done a similar thing to put themselves in work as well. Yeah,
definitely.
That's kind of my first year. I got a great piece of, I started producing, and also, really importantly, skipped over this. The Blue Room said, okay, you've got to put the name of your theatre company at the top of the form. So I went, and that was the beginning of New Ghosts. I put New Ghosts up, and there's a longer story there about how I chose New Ghosts, and it was a collaborative effort with some friends of mine who were doing shows with me at the time. But I had to write a name there, wrote that name, and that theatre company is still here with me today.
Still here.
And has gone bigger and more fun along the way. Yeah. So that's my first year out. It was very packed full of drama. Oh, and I got some terrible reviews, that was another big thing.
Really?
I got some really great reviews, but you know how it is. I think it's the same for any actor or any creative. You read the bad. It's just the bad ones, the ones that stay with you. And they were crushing. I felt so depressed to have got your first work up that you had done so much in. I got really great. This is so funny how artists hold these negative things with them. And I don't think the reviews were even like that bad, but just to not have people, I think you really believe when you do a show like that people are going to be like, this is it. Someone published this, you know, like you have changed theatre. And that didn't happen. My review in the big paper that got written up in West Australian was 3 stars, you know, and that was like, yeah, it was, and I got, you know, I was a first time writer. Of course it wasn't great. Yeah. But man, that was a journey as well, to go through like the heartbreak and the misery. And then the next day get a good review. And then suddenly you're over the world. Like, what a crazy emotional roller coaster it is to do a show and being a playwright. That was the scariest thing ever. Like, I felt so vulnerable. And anything anyone said about it must have been my fault, you know, like even if the comment was about an actor, well, I wrote it like that. So, you know, like it was so much more personal to me than acting was, or that directing is. Yeah. Which is a beautiful segue into you, Emma, who is much more of a playwright and still a playwright to this day. Didn't quit it like I did.
Not yet.
But tell us about your first year out. What did that look like for you?
Yeah, it was a bit wild. So I graduated in September it would have been just before, I think August of 2015. So I just turned 18 in July. And I somewhere, actually it was when I started uni at 15, I also flew down to Sydney to meet with a Sydney agent, Moles and Keatley, who were my first Sydney agent. I met with them. They were incredibly lovely, incredibly supportive and encouraging. And so I signed with them, and of course was on the Gold Coast for the next couple of years, but sort of, you know, taping for bits and bobs. And, you know, I think at that point it hadn't really occurred to me that I'd probably end up moving. I think maybe it was in the back of my mind that most actors moved to Melbourne or Sydney, you know. It was kind of the standard route that people took. It wasn't really that common for actors to stay.
Yes,
in
and
Queensland.
that was the same for me in Perth, and I skipped over that bit completely. But yes, completely felt the same. That coming out of Whopper, it was like, oh, you moved to Sydney, so what you do?
You gotta go.
Yeah.
So I finished uni, and I had sort of planned that I would stay and do my master's in screenwriting. This was my plan.
So you were into the writing by now.
Yeah, I was, and I think I was also really just loving the safety net of uni. Yeah. And I think I don't know, I think it had been encouraged by the head of my course, and I think I sort of just latched on to this idea of staying and doing my master's, and it meant another year in this place that I had become quite comfortable, and you know, it wasn't forcing me out into the real world to kind of figure out what the hell I was doing. It was just, yeah, there was definitely a safety attached to this plan, and by September, between August and September, I had a conversation with my agent, who were pretty much like, you should move here and give it a go, because we you know, can't do as much for you where you are as we could if you were here. And yeah, I think I had a chat with my parents, and surprisingly they were quite I don't know, I think they were quite supportive of this idea of moving. And I think my mum in particular was like, if you want to do this, it's kind of where you need to be, which I don't think is what I was expecting to hear.
Like a little baby.
I was a little, yeah. I don't know if I felt quite ready to leave the nest. And, you know, I had a partner here as well, who I am with to this day, who, you know, obviously there was you know, something there as well of, all of a sudden I'm moving interstate. How are we going to navigate that? The joys of, you know, long distance. And so that was a factor that was playing on my mind. But I think you know, once I'd had that conversation with my agent and the conversation with my parents, I think I was like, okay, this is what's happening. I'm going to move. And so sort of packed up my life into a couple of suitcases and moved on down. And I moved down with the idea that I would do this 20-week course at an institution in Sydney, which had a branch in Queensland that I'd worked a bit with. And so there was kind of a familiarity there. I met a gal on Flatmates who was moving down from Coffs Harbour. And we started talking online, and we found a place together in Newtown. And I moved to Sydney, moved in with her, and my Sydney life started. I started this course, which funnily enough, she was also enrolled on. Wild, small world. And it just wasn't at all what I expected it was going to be. And so I ended up withdrawing.
Why, Emma? Tell us the gossip.
The gossip.
The gossip podcast, didn't you know?
Yeah, I think I was at a point where I just wanted some real, I really just wanted to train. You know, I think it's I think Chick had talked about it in her episode. I just really wanted some solid acting training, and I felt like that wasn't what this course was offering. It felt a little like it felt like it had no structure.
Yeah.
And I'm a person who, like, if I'm especially in education, I want structure, like, and I felt like it was just kind of, it just wasn't what I expected it was going to be. And I decided that I'd be better off, and you know, it was a significant amount of money as well. And so I decided to withdraw. And I was then sort of like, what do I do now? I must admit my first year was a little bit back and forthing. So I would sort of be in Sydney for maybe 3 weeks, and I'd fly home for a weekend or whatever, and then I'd come back for another maybe month, and then I go back. So it was a little bit back and forth. And it was really hard. I really struggled. I found a home at the Hub studio, which Ollie Wen runs, and is a great resource. I worked there with, I did so many courses there because I just loved it. I worked with Les Chantry for the first time there, who was a wonderful screen acting teacher, mentor extraordinaire. And I also worked with Kevin Jackson, who, you know, has a fun reputation, but for me was really the teacher who sparked my fire again. I think I remember like doing his first class, and I got home and I did this little Facebook status about how, and you know, I was so inspired. I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I've been waiting for. And it really reignited my passion for acting. So that was wonderful. And I think I also, because what year was that? 2015. I think that at the end of that year, I also booked my first theatre production. I think it's that. It was then. And that went on at the start of 2016. I think I've got my years right, which was That Eye the Sky at the New Theatre. So yeah, because I was only in Sydney from September of that year, from September. So it was only a few months. And then I went back home for Christmas, and I came back, and I did the show, which was an incredible experience. And I worked with a director, Dave Burton, Dave Burrows. Dave Burton is a writer. Dave Burrows. Sorry, Dave. Love you, Dave. Love you, Sasha.
Yeah.
And he was a NIDA grad, and from the directing stream. And so I think he brought a lot of that to the room, and it was just such a great rehearsal period. I've chatted to him about it since, because I don't know, I think it was my first theatre production in pretty much since I was like that baby 5-year-old. I mean, I'd done productions in school and, you know, bits and bobs, but this was like my first proper stage gig. And I loved it. I worked, there was an actor in the cast, Joel Horwood, who is a phenomenal actor. And I remember being so inspired by him. He was playing the lead and I was playing his sister. And I just remember looking at him like, oh my gosh, this is such a talented actor. And I was just so enamored with his talent. Also met Simon Thompson there, who we love, who I later formed eye contact with. And he was great. And we had sort of a slow blooming friendship. And he has kind of been one of the few pillars that have really made Sydney home for me.
So we talked a bit about networks and how, you know, we neither of us have really our careers didn't necessarily bounce straight from the network or at least haven't today. So do you think it was this show for you that you found your people?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, yeah, I really struggled for my first few years in Sydney because I did really feel that I knew no one. I had my agent, but I knew no one. And, you know, I didn't know who the directors were. I didn't know who the casting agents were. I didn't know who the actors were, what the theatre companies were. Like, all of it was totally new to me. And I was sort of had to learn a lot and figure a lot out. I know.
Poor little Emma.
Yeah, so it was really hard. And I struggled again, you know, as being someone who can be a little on the introvert spectrum as well. I found it difficult to be in this new city and meeting people. I just was like, how do people do it? But yeah, Simon was like probably my first person that I was like, and it was a slow burn, but we really sort of clicked, and he became that first sort of like, oh yeah, I'm like, you know, making this happen, and I'm finding my people, which is so important. You've got to find your people, and you know, they don't have to be in the industry. I think my people are all in the industry, but I
think you've got to have some people.
You've got to have some people, yeah,
to support you in this career. You know, you've got to have your creative partners in crime.
Yeah.
And you are for me now.
Yes, and you are for me.
Everyone needs Emma to their Lucy, you know?
Oh, absolutely. Or Lucy to their Emma. Yeah, and I did that show, and I didn't do any other shows that year, despite my best efforts. And then the following year I did my second, and I think the following year I pretty much worked the whole year in independent theatre, just back to back to back to back. And then it sort of, you know, kept going from there. But, you know, it took a lot of time and a lot of I mean, still to this day, like it's a lot of rejection, and it's a lot of you know, getting close to things and not getting them, or you know, feeling you're so right for something but not being able to get in the door. You know, there's a lot of that. But yeah, I think by the 2.5, 3 year point was of being in Sydney was when I finally felt I'd found my feet. And that was, you know, I had Simon, I met Jess Davis on a theatre production, which she was in the cast of. She's since moved more into directing, but we met, and I think then that was when I was like, okay, I'm starting to build a network. Since, you know, I see a lot of theatre, and I think going to the theatre so regularly.
Right. You go to so much theatre. Yeah, this is like one of the first fun facts I had about you back when we first met was like, how many shows did you see that year? Do you remember?
I think I had a couple of years of seeing like upwards of 100. It was like 137 maybe was the peak. And it was something Jess and I saw a lot of those shows together. And it was sort of like, I mean, one, I love seeing theatre, and I'm a huge, like, I love being in an audience and seeing plays. I just think it's the best. But also it was like a way of feeling connected to this crazy industry, and also starting to get to know people and to get to know what, you know, what kind of work this director does, or this company does, or this actor does. You know, having eye contact now, it's great to be like, especially in the independent scene, be like, oh wow, that actor's really has something that would be really great for this project that we'd like to do one day. You know, it's a bit of that happens now too. But yeah, it was also just a big thing of trying to create a network and get to know people.
Which I want to touch on for a second longer, this idea, because I think this is one of the really interesting things about, you know, is this something I have to do as a young actor? And that is networking at its finest, in a foyer, going up to people who, you know, and introducing yourself. How important is that in this industry? Because you've done a lot of foyers now, you know, and was that helpful for you, or was it more that, you know, you were like, has the benefit of it been recognizing your colleagues' works on stage and more than the actual social connection, which can sometimes be really hard?
Oh gosh, yeah. And look, I've done a lot of foyers, but I've rarely spoken to people in foyers. You know, I you know, I think I mean, being someone who's put on a show and who's been in a foyer, like as the show's creator, you are very aware of who's there and whose faces you recognize. And so I think part of me was like, I think just being seen to be there and to support the work is enough. And it's also this line, you know, I'm just not great. That's not the kind of person. I'm not someone who can confidently go up and be like, hi, I'm Emma, I'm an actor, I love your work. I mean, there have been occasions where you know, maybe I'm seeing the show with somebody who knows somebody in the show, therefore I get involved in a conversation with somebody. And very occasionally little Emma will have like a little outburst and be able to like go up to somebody and be like,
the true identity as an actor.
Yeah, but to be honest, most of the time that's been to fellow actors rather than to the creatives. You know, like I've definitely fangirled over some actors in foyers because I just felt like I couldn't not. But yeah, I'm not sure if I've ever really had a conversation with the director in a foyer. I was lucky to do KXT's Step Up program last year, I think. And that gave us the opportunity to meet and chat with directors in a slightly less icky situation. You know, we'd have a little Q&A and then we'd, you know, hang out in the foyer and have a drink and just have a casual chat, which sort of took that awkwardness and that pressure off, you know, being in a foyer and trying to make that connection in a kind of forced or fake way. And so like opportunities like that are great. And I think, you know, KXT does great work for emerging artists, you know, that being one of many ways. But it's really hard. I'm not a good networker. I wish I don't know, part of me wishes I was better, and part of me is like, you know what, you just have to embrace the kind of person you are and be true to that. And if you're someone who feels comfortable and confident approaching someone, I think go for it. And if you're not, don't beat yourself up about it. But I think it is important to have a presence and to support your colleagues and be a part of the community. And, you know, because you want them to come and see your work, so it makes sense to go and support their work. And it's definitely made me just feel less like a feather in the wind and more like, oh yeah, this is my community, even though you know,
I had no idea who you were.
Yeah, but I'm still there. Hello. And you know, there's a bit of a novelty thing as well of just being the gal that sees all the shows, you know.
It was. I remember. Oh my God.
Who is this person?
Yeah, you're like the standing ovation man.
Oh yes, Graham and I. Yeah. Maybe I'll start doing that.
Yeah, you should. Only at my shows though. Yeah, I agree though, and I have, you know, I think it's always really like I enjoy, because you end up having to reach out to these people sometimes anyway. You know, there's been times where, for instance, I will invite Kit Williams to one of my shows, you know, and that is you know, I'll send him an email, and it's really nice to be able to start the email with, by the way, I just love that production. I saw, I was in the audience last week.
Totally.
It's beautiful to be able to connect with people about their work, even if it's not in that forced foyer situation.
Yeah, I think so. And just the knowledge of what different creatives are about. Like, and I love that. I love going to a director's show and being, and kind of having an inkling of, I mean, you're still going to be surprised. And I love being surprised at the theater, but sort of knowing, a little bit of what you're in for, like, as you grow to know what a company or a creative's taste, or tendencies are on where their sort of work exists, in the spectrum of theatre making, and I enjoy that, and I think that that's an asset as someone who is then probably going to audition for these people, because you can go, okay, well, this is kind of what their productions lean towards, if there's someone who directs a lot of comedy, that's great to know, and that's valuable. And also, as you say, having that conversation in the audition room of, oh, I saw this work of yours and I thought it was really interesting or really great, or I loved the script, whatever.
Probably don't give them, any. I really thought Act 2 needed some work.
This is it's a bizarre thing to me, actors who write reviews. I know, because it just seems like that can never go well.
Pray that you never see a work you don't like.
Fingers crossed.
Absolutely. It's an interesting one. I feel the same. I've had really great experiences with reaching out to people in a mentor capacity. Like, when I first got to Sydney, I reached out to Mara Savage and Kip Williams and Sarah Goods and Paige Rattray, just to say, hello, I really want to be a director. I would love to get a coffee. And all four of them, and I'm probably forgetting other incredible people, but got coffee with me, and gave me their time. And I think the difference was I wasn't being like, hello, give me a job, and I wasn't going in with that. I think it would be more difficult because I was a emerging director talking to directors about their journey, doing like pretty much this podcast, but like interviewing them. How did you do it? What do I need? Having those conversations. It's very organic and genuine. If I was an actor, would I have felt confident to reach out to Kip Williams and say, hello, how do I become someone in your cast? I mean, that is more difficult.
It's a different conversation.
Perhaps. It is a different conversation, but it's not to say that you couldn't find an actor you really admired and done the same thing with them that I did with these directors.
That's such an important thing to hear, I think, because it's something that I think I'm becoming comfortable doing more of. Is just like asking the question and reaching out, and so often creatives are so generous with their time and with their and giving advice, and you just never know until you ask. And if you send a polite email or a message, or make contact in a way that doesn't have an attitude, isn't expecting anything per se, but just try and grab a coffee. I think that's really great, and you're not losing anything by making that contact. If they're too busy or if they're not interested, they'll say no, and you're not really losing anything, and you could gain something. So why not? I think it's just all in just approaching it the right way.
I think the more genuine you can make your
Totally.
networking experiences, everyone's going to feel happy. You're going to feel less bad. They're not going to think you're weird.
So
anyway,
true.
But I think it's a nicer experience for everyone.
Yeah, and I think there's a shift in the industry, away from competition and more towards this idea of collaboration and and community. And I think it's especially in the theatre network, as I say, people are generous with their time, and I think if you really want to learn and to grow and to ask some questions, pick some brains, you'd be surprised at how people will make that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're nearly at the end of our episode, but let's take a bit of time to talk about what we're doing now. Emma, tell me a couple of things that were your highlights of the Emma journey in terms of the recent stuff, the big projects.
Oh gosh,
I've got them in mind if you need help.
So last year was quite an exciting year for me. I had a few sort of things ticked off that that I got to do, which I'm most grateful for. So I started the year working with, was it this last year or was this the year before? I might be blurring 2018 and 2019, but there are a few recent things that sort of stand out. I got to firstly work with ATYP on their Intersection series at the Griffin Theatre, which was incredible. And I love
the
that.
First time I saw Emma, that's how I met Emma. Went to the show, and talking about networking, that's being in a show makes things easier. I came to you and said,
yes,
you're amazing.
Yes, and I fangirled over Lucy's partner Brandon, which was great.
Bring it away with you. It helps.
That was wonderful. Made some fab friends. There, Grace Stamness is a wonderful actor who was part of that cast, and we'd sort of been bumping into each other for a little while, but had never really had a real chance to connect, but got to connect with her on that show, which was wonderful. And you know, I love that you get to you meet these fab people when you're working on projects, and people that become really near and dear and close and wonderful to you. And we got to work in the Griffin space, which was a space that was really, I was just so excited to be in because, you know, it's the home of so much new Australian work. And so to be on that stage, I was like, oh. And working with ATYP, of course, they're a company that I have so much respect for, and I think they do incredible things for young actors. And I love all that they stand for, and how beautiful the community that they've created is. I got to play Eliza Doolittle in a production of Pygmalion, which was wonderful, absolute dream role. And she was such a wonderful challenge that I just loved every second of it, despite it being, you know, exhausting and, you know, quite, you know, it took a lot out of me each night, but worked with Steve Corner as my opposite as my Higgins, and he is just a beautiful actor, so giving and so playful, which is the best dynamic for a scene partner. And then Eye Contact Theatre Company presented my first play, Hairworm, which I had been writing for many years, and had a few staged reads across Sydney in the prior years. It finally got up. We mounted it with a cast of 9 women, which was just the most extraordinary experience. Jess Davis directed. I had actually booked a tour with Monkey Bar Theatre Company, who are another dream company. I would work with them again in a heartbeat. Again, everything they stand for, I just absolutely support, and they've just got a phenomenal team of people there that I adore. And I got to go on tour with them on an adaptation of Jackie French's Hitler's Daughter, which was wild. Such a good experience. We performed for a lot of school-aged youth, young people. We had Q&As after most of our performances with the young people, and so having that interaction was really unique. We did an East Coast tour, so kind of went up Queensland and New South Wales and some Victoria, and it was just the best. And I think, yeah, that connection with, and that opportunity to sort of to speak with the young people in the audience was just really humbling and inspiring, and just, you know, getting to chat with people who were interested in the arts or had been inspired by something in the story was amazing. Meanwhile, Hairworm was going on, which I was supposed to be, obviously I'd written, but I was supposed to be a little bit more involved with, but couldn't be because I was off on the road. But it was in Jess's very capable hands, and I was back in time for opening. So that went up, which was a huge achievement for all of us. Eye Contact's first show, my first play going up, was at the old 505 Theatre, which present a lot of new work, which is incredible. And it was just the most rewarding experience ever. I it was very overwhelming. It was quite a very personal story. So it was quite vulnerable and scary, but it was just in the best hands, and forever grateful to all those women who made it happen. And
I think you've got to talk about audio guide, because that's
oh yes. Before audio guide, I worked with Luce on Blue Christmas at the King's Cross Theatre. That was our first time actually in the room together, working on a thing. It was a double bill, 2 incredible plays, both new works by women's, part of the Ignite Collective, so women in all departments. Luce will probably talk more about it, so I won't ramble on about it. But that was amazing, being in in a totally female occupied space. I just loved. And somewhere in all of that, I shot a short film, audio guide, which has been doing the festival rounds. It's now 4 times Oscar qualifying, which is wild. But yeah,
it's also like, just to give some picture to this, it's like the one woman show film version, you know, like it's just Emma is the short film.
It's just my face, and I don't say a word, which was a really different thing to do, and something I was kind of equally terrified and excited about. Worked with Chrysalina, directed it, who I'd worked with on a short film before that with the wonderful Nix Calder, who does the voiceover in audio guide, and Charmaine was on that one as well. Can You Dig It was the name of the film. And then we did audio guide, shot on film, which is its own sort of presents its own sort of challenges, but also just makes it's so beautiful to look at. I mean, it really gives this sort of, I don't know, timeless, ethereal quality to the picture. And so yeah, that's around doing festivals, doing quite well, which is really exciting. And I think that pretty much brings us up to date. And then COVID happened. We started Jumpstart. Obviously, we'd both been teaching youth drama for a number of years. And we're both really passionate about it, but and I think both had dreams of branching out into our own little business, but hadn't really expected it to maybe happen just yet, or believed that we could make it happen. And then COVID happened, and we put our 2 brains together, and here we are. Jumpstart.
Yay! I didn't wear mine because I figured I was going to be from here up, so I was like, I'll be colourful instead,
rather than just in black. But you can see.
But there you go. We got it in frame. There he is. For those watching on the podcast, listening on the podcast, Emma is currently showing us her great Jumpstart t-shirt.
You'll have to just go onto YouTube and just skip to this section just to see it. But I promise you it happens. Yeah. And so what about you, Lucy? You are quite the super Wonder Woman. Graduate Whopper, you get your show up at the Blue Room, it goes up at the Fitz, and New Ghosts is going. I want to hear more about New Ghosts' trajectory and what you're doing now, what you're doing next, highlights, all the things.
Well, first of all, a really important part, if we skip back to where I ended the last chapter of my story, which was I just moved to Sydney and put my show on at the Fitz. That was a really life-changing experience for me, because I was living in this tiny little apartment in Ashfield, and I had to cast it. And I just moved to Sydney. I didn't know anyone, you know. And Brandon helped me kind of get this short list together of some women who maybe would want to be in it. And we only had one other male. So we had 2 female roles and 1 male role. And we had some amazing men coming in for the male role, and it ended up going to Benjamin, who's a fabulous actor. But I think there was a couple that we saw. But then the list of women, I didn't even know anyone in Sydney. We managed to make this huge list, and they all said yes to auditioning. The bunch included Contessa Trafone, and Rose Wright. All of them have Sydney Theatre Awards now, you know. But it was mental. They all didn't know me. They all came to my living room in Ashfield to audition for this show that was going to be on at 10 p.m. at the Old Fitz. Wild. So that's when I quit acting. because I had this realization, I suppose, that I would rather create work for these amazing people that I was meeting. It became very clear to me that young women was a huge demographic in performing arts. For every one male we auditioned, we must have seen like 6 women. Like it was just crazy. So I was very aware that I was in that demographic. I honestly didn't feel like I was good enough to compete. I didn't, it wasn't maybe, it is such a competitive world in Sydney. And I was really enjoying directing and writing. So I made that decision. I'm not going to act anymore. I'm just going to focus on creating work instead. And hopefully, I'll be able to create work for these amazing women that I wasn't able to cast this time. Or some of them I did, some of them I wasn't able to cast. So because there was only 2 roles and there were so many of them. So speed through time, I do many more life-changing experiences myself in terms of shows. I did a little residency at the Old Fitz Theatre after that, which included 2 brand new Australian works being made. Like I was I was with them pre the work being conceptualized, so I was very much a part of that. That was Sam O'Sullivan and Katie Warner were the 2 playwrights, and they're both incredibly important parts of my life still. Katie I've worked with many more times. And that really, so I was solidifying, I only seem to be doing new work. And I knew I wanted to kind of work more with women and emerging artists. So my company's kind of forming its thing, I'm actually, even though I was really loved performing Shakespeare, I have no interest in directing it, which is interesting. I think it's because I didn't have a big, like every time I worked with a director of Shakespeare, they knew Shakespeare. Like they were like a Shakespeare expert, they did these amazing things for me as a performer. I was like, I don't think I can do that for anyone. Like, I don't feel like I'm the Shakespeare expert. So, but I do feel like maybe I'm the new work expert is what little Lucy's thinking. So I kept that going. Run through time. This is still happening. I do Yen, incredible. And that was my first international work. Also new work for Australia. It was an Australian debut. And I said, okay, I'm going to take this thing about creating work for young women more seriously. And I created the Ignite Collective, which Emma is in. And that was very special. So that was bringing together 30 local female theatre makers from all different roles and I thought, together we can create these works which are made for young women, by young women, supporting the creatives and giving the playwrights a platform, but we're all working specifically to get these 10 women in the ensemble on the stage. So it was very supporting each other. Katie Warner, who I'd worked with at Fitz, was one of the playwrights. And we did our debut at the end of last year, which was a huge career highlight to me. And that's what Emma had mentioned. It was called Blue Christmas. It was 2 brand new Australian plays, which was, wow, what a feat to do that. Huge at the moment. We had one on at 25A this year. It was cancelled with COVID. But that was amazing as well. And then I'm currently working with Chella Williams on a play that's going to be on in Darwin. So it's really taken me all over the place, this experience. And I mean, at the moment, I'm kind of living the career highlight as we talk right now in terms of I'm doing a show called Iphigenia and Iphigenia. I had to say it in the Welsh way because it's a Welsh way. Iphigenia is hot. It's how the Welsh say it. And that's going to be up at Flight Park in just 4 weeks. So that we're right in the media end of that. That's a 1-woman show, and the actress who I mentioned before, Meg Clark, is just doing such amazing work. By the time you hear this podcast, the show will be over, and I will be retrospective. So that's crazy to think, but I really feel like I'm living out the highlights there very much. I did a stint in New York, thought I wanted to move there and live there. It hasn't happened, but wow, what an experience that was. Just incredible. Have I missed anything? I feel like that's the things, right?
Oh, you've
done. And I take
so
a lot of my
things.
work back to Perth, which has been great. So for every year, for quite a while there, the shows that I had done, particularly the new Australian works, I would then do a season of them in Perth at the Perth Fringe. And I got to perform I got my productions up in like the State Theatre and the Blue Room again, keep coming home to the Blue Room. So all of that has really, we've done, full circle and kept those roots alive as well. And one of the really exciting things about Iphigenia and Splot, keep correct me on that, is that it will be filmed and we are going to go, you know, we'll be able to be seen from everywhere. So I'm really excited for the opportunity to kind of connect up all my networks from New York and from Perth and kind of actually be able to share that.
Is that the first time that you're directing a play that is filmed?
That's the first time I'm directing anything that's had a camera.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what's that like? How has that like changed your process in terms of like creating a play that also functions as a filmed play?
There's a lot more terror involved.
Great, we love that. Theatre needs more terror. Mm-hmm.
There's been a lot, so it's very collaborative. Straight away, I brought in the experts, you know. So we've got an incredible cinematographer on board, and sound recorders and a sound mixer, and a camera operator. We have a whole team on it, and I'm very in their capable hands. You know, I'm just like, tell me what to do, and I'll be there. It's very much the vibe of the room. There was a lot of chat at the beginning about whether the play we should just do the play and then they'll find the best way to film it, or whether we should be thinking about the fact it's going to be filmed in the creation of the play. So that was a big back and forth. And in the end, I decided the latter. I decided we need to really be thinking about the play version from the get-go. So it's going to be Steadicam model, which is unusual to see a play filmed like that. But that really inspired the way we blocked it. So I think Meg and I both kind of had in our head at the beginning of the process that it would be a fairly stationary play. It would be her very much talking to the audience, probably in a fairly small room to move in. And it's been the opposite. We were like, okay, we got to move this thing. We want to make it interesting. We want to make the camera be able to move with her. So it's really evolved with that in mind. But I'm still really, I'm with Meg. You know, we work on it together. It's all about the blocking. It's all about Meg. And I'm planning to, we haven't got there yet, but like my cinematographer is the one who's going to help me with like turning those into shots. I'm certainly not going to be the expert in the room in that, and I'm excited not to be, and I'm really excited to be that collaborative with him.
Yeah. And do you have any thoughts on how this, you know, this COVID will shape our industry as we move forward? I mean, do you think that, you know, filmed theatre is going to occupy more space or be more common or popular, or what do you think? Do you think technology is really going to take hold of the industry?
Well, ask me again when I'm done. But right now, I feel like film theatre is awesome. I'm so into it. I love that I can share this play with Perth and New York at the same time as be here in Sydney. I think that's so special. I love that I can see works on West End. I think theatre can be quite can be quite inaccessible if you're living remotely, or if you're not living in a major metropolitan hub. Even in Perth, you know, which is a metropolitan hub, you know, like I didn't have the theatre that I have in Sydney, and I think that's disappointing that it is like that, and that it often costs a lot of money, and it can be really hard. And I think the film theatre world really opens it up. It makes it more accessible. It's a big debate topic in our industry right now, is if it should be filmed, if it's still theatre, if it's filmed. I'm a big advocate for it. My view is that everything we do is art, and we have to change. We have to but there's going to be movements in art. Things are going to change and evolve. And I don't really care if people wouldn't label it theatre because it's filmed. But it's not filmed. You know, it's a new thing, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
So that's my view on it. It really depends where COVID goes next. I think being able to try it, I think it's smart to have it on your radar at the moment. Film theatre. Who knows? If all theatres open back up soon, then it may not be. But I don't think that's going to happen internationally, at least. You know, even if Australia succeeds with that, I think we're gonna be seeing a lot. Film theatre is going to become a much bigger thing internationally. It's gotta. Yeah,
I agree. And something else that's been sort of sitting in my head. Do you miss acting? And like, would there be a project that could come along and like draw you back in? Do you think that could happen?
And I was so interested in this question when I decided to stop as well. And the answer is no. I don't miss it at all. I remember, like, even when I'm in rehearsals directing actors, I'm like, I'm glad I'm not you. Like, I'm so much happier in this scene. Like, getting to watch from the sidelines. I loved acting, but gosh, I don't miss it. I think the reasons I didn't enjoy Whopper come into it. You know, I'm not a very physical person, and I have a very specific way I like to work. And as a director, I get to make my room what I want to make it, and make it those things that I like. And also, even if it's a show, it does have a physical element. I ain't doing it; someone else's. You know. And I think, those. I really enjoy being the curator rather than the performer. And I think I'm better at it too. I do. I think I'm good at putting a team together, and that's been a big part of what I do, is recognizing talent and then being like, "You're with me, kid."
Yeah.
And I really enjoy where it's given me a lot more control. I have a lot more control than I did as an actor in my destiny, my career.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably, you would say the same in terms of playwriting and having your own company.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's great for actors, for all creatives to sort of to experience like moving around a bit in the various departments. Not only because, as I've waffled on about before, you're gaining that respect and understanding and appreciation and all that jazz for what everybody else is doing, but also you might find somewhere that feels better or that you enjoy more. I know quite a few artists who have started out in one discipline and moved into another, and that's worked really well for them. And for me, it is about I just want to act, I want to create, I want to tell stories, and I don't want to be at the industry's mercy all the time. Like, of course, I'm still auditioning for projects, and I love obviously working for companies and on works that aren't my own, but having eye contact with Jess and Simon, I think has been really empowering, and it's just so great to have that ability and opportunity to firstly choose what you're working on, and to really like work on projects that you love. I mean, so often as an actor, you're auditioning for projects, and it's, you don't always get to work on projects that you love.
That's a big thing I found with acting. That's a huge part for me. Yeah.
Especially when you're getting started. I mean, obviously you can be more selective as you go, but when you're starting, it can be a bit of, you take what you can get, which obviously isn't an ideal way to work, and it's not the way everybody works. But I think for me, it was just like, well, I just want to act, so I'll do anything. And it can be hard. Like, of course, you still enjoy the process of it, but God, you start to long for a text that, excites you. And so having eye contact and being able to go, okay, well, what are our dream plays? Like, what's the kind of play that we really as artists want to do and that fulfills us? So having that and just being able to go, all right, well, if the doors are hard to open, then we'll just create our own ones. I think it's healthy in terms of giving you some control and some autonomy and agency. And it's just rewarding. Hard work, but it's great. And having Jumpstart as well, I think is really amazing, just to give back and to work with young artists, in that early career development, or just young people who are looking for social outlets or opportunities, like my sister to increase their confidence, or to get better at public speaking, or to work on all of those things that we know that drama can be so helpful for in a young person's life and development. I think eye contact and Jumpstart, and then my own acting endeavors, I think all three sort of really nicely come together, and that's it's the best for me, because I feel like I'm getting to do all the things I want to do, and they're all things that I'm so passionate and excited about. So yeah,
I agree. And I think in other art forms, like my mum's a visual artist, draws. She's always doing it, she's on drawing all day. It is her full-time career that she draws. As actors and in theatre makers in general, we don't have that luxury. We actually have to be given an opportunity to do what we love. So when you're sacrificing so much, when you take these big risks in your life and your career to do something because you love it so much, and then you end up just not doing it, And that's heartbreaking.
It's so hard. And so, yeah, and I've had so many conversations with people about this. You know, actors can't just get in a room by themselves and act.
Yeah.
And directors the same. You can't just be stand in a room by yourself and direct. You know, it just relies on a team of people being together, and it relies on opportunity. Exactly. And so,
yeah, the more you can be in that driving seat, the more you can put yourself there.
Absolutely. And it's only gonna help you. You know, you learn on the job, and you can also get exposure that way. You know, working in the independent theatre sector, I think is incredible. And it's great to be able to be like, hey guys, come see work that I'm putting on, that I'm doing. Actually see me doing the thing that we so often, you know, have periods where we don't get to do. So yeah.
I completely agree. Well, Emma Wright, thank you so much for joining me for a second episode. And this, at the moment, is the last episode in our series. We are really excited about the idea of bringing this back and doing a second round. And we're also, I think this leads in quite well to what we're just saying, we're interested in doing an Ask a Creative series where we talk more to producers and to set designers, that mystical thing that was never taught to us in film schools, as well as directors, playwrights, stage managers, you name it, we'll have it. So if that is something that interests you, please let us know. Send through your questions, and we'd love to hear from you. Do you want to take us out, Emma?
Sure, I will take us out, Lucy Clements. Thank you so much for joining us for Ask an Actor for episode 7. We may be back, but otherwise there is tons of other content that we're producing and getting out there. So check it out, and we'll see you next time.